Welcome to my 5th annual sunscreen roundup collaboration with my dear friend Claudia Glows. Between the two of us, we are reviewing well over 30 different sunscreens. Now, Claudia was a little more ambitious than I, and I think she has close to 20. So after you watch this video, make sure to pay Claudia a visit. Anyway, we do this collaboration every May in honor of Skin Cancer Awareness Month. And as we get into the long, hot days of summer, I know we're all thinking sunscreen. Now, all the sunscreens I'm sharing today are broad spectrum, which means they protect against both UVB burning rays and UVA aging rays. All the sunscreens are mineral-based, they're all fragrance-free and alcohol-free. And I didn't experience any pilling with any of these sunscreens, and they all work really well under makeup, except one. All the sunscreens I'm talking about today, all the makeup I have on my face and my sweater will be listed and linked in the description box below and the top pinned comment and in YouTube shopping as usual, so you can do your own research. And I will also link my sunscreen playlist because over the years I have reviewed well over 100 different sunscreens. Just a couple of quick notes before we get into the reviews. Number 1, it is critical to apply the correct amount of sunscreen. In order to achieve the SPF that's listed on the label, you must apply 1/4 teaspoon to the face and another 1/4 teaspoon to the neck and chest. That is a lot of sunscreen, and it can be really difficult to find a sunscreen that looks good with that amount applied. You know, it drives me crazy when I see sunscreens reviews where they just dab a little bit on. So you will see me applying 1/4 teaspoon to my face in today's video. Now, I'm not applying it to my neck and chest in today's video because I usually like to apply sunscreen to my neck and chest before I get dressed, and I do prefer an untinted sunscreen so it doesn't get on my clothing. The other thing it's important for you to know is that my 66-year-old skin is extremely dry. Not quite as dry in the heat and humidity of summer, but still pretty dry. And I do prefer a bit of a glow. You know, we all have different skin types, skin tones, preferences, and we all live in different climates. So just because I enjoy a sunscreen doesn't necessarily mean you will. And if I happen to not like a sunscreen that you love, don't be offended. Please share your favorite sunscreens in the comment box below so we can all help each other. Now let's get into it. Okay, and in case you're wondering, that is Bosley, my 16-year-old mini golden doodle. Anyway, the first sunscreen I have, you know, it can be very difficult to find an untinted mineral sunscreen that does not leave a white cast. So I was a little bit skeptical to try CeraVe's new Invisible Mineral Facial Sunscreen SPF 50. Although I was encouraged to see that it has a 4.7 star rating on Ulta. It comes with a pump, which I enjoy, and as you can see, it does have a pretty thin consistency. Ingredients include zinc oxide 15.35% and titanium dioxide 2.66%. Now, once it sets down, that white cast does disappear. Anyway, ingredients include, I'm looking at my computer here, ceramides, hyaluronic acid, glycerin, panthenol, and niacinamide. CeraVe claims this is a weightless, non-greasy, hydrating formula with no white cast, suitable for all skin types, including sensitive. Now, I did measure, and 5 pumps does equal 1/4 teaspoon. That's one of the reasons I really do enjoy sunscreens that come with a pump, because once you measure out your 1/4 teaspoon, you know exactly how many pumps. Anyway, I find this blends really easily. It feels very lightweight yet moisturizing. It is quite glowy at first, but it dries down after about 20 minutes to a satin finish with just a touch of radiance and no white cast. So this one surprised me the most because I haven't had the best luck with drugstore sunscreens, But this one is really, really beautiful, and I love the price point. Next up, we have Kopari Bright as Day Sheer Mineral SPF 50. Now this one has 4.2 stars on Ulta. It is $38 for 50 mLs. Let me show you the consistency. It's another pretty thin formula, very lightly tinted. This contains 10.8% zinc oxide, propanediol to hydrate, astaxanthin and vitamin C for antioxidant protection, and niacinamide for the barrier. Now this also includes iron oxides, which help protect against blue light. Actually, all of the tinted SPFs I'm sharing today do have iron oxides to protect against blue light. It also is what gives it the tint. Anyway, I was really, really excited to try this one because this was Angie's favorite sunscreen in her roundup last year. I do enjoy the lightweight, serumy, almost gel-like texture with just a touch of tint. It does blend easily and it dries down pretty quickly, you know, the usual 10, 15, or 20 minutes, to a lovely satin finish. Unfortunately, it is just a little bit too warm for my skin tone, but it might work better in the summer months when I have a little more color on my face. I also found this to feel just a little bit drying as the day wore on, but again, it might work better for me in the heat and humidity of the summer months. So right now, I'm not totally crazy about this one. Like I said, it's a little bit too warm and not quite moisturizing enough for me right now. But that just goes to show how we're all different. One person's favorite is another person's, okay. Oh my gosh, sorry for the way the lighting keeps changing. It's one of those partly cloudy days. Anyway, next we have Ultraviolet Future Screen SPF 50 Modern Mineral Sunscreen. That's a mouthful. This one is 4.5 stars on Sephora, and it is $40 for 50 mLs. Now, one thing I will say, I'm not in love with the packaging. Because it's round on the bottom, I can't set it down. And if I lay it on its side without the cap on, it will leak out. Anyway, this one is the thinnest of all so far. You can see it is extremely liquidy. Put the cap back on so it doesn't leak. This has almost a gray tone, which really does disappear into my skin beautifully. It contains cocoa caprylate, squalane, propanolol, triglycerides, and vitamin E. This is super lightweight and sheer, and it blends effortlessly. It feels very moisturizing and soothing, and it dries down to a really pretty radiant finish. I prefer this one over the Kopari, partly because of the shade, but also because it feels more moisturizing. However, I really wish both Kopari and Ultraviolet would come out with some more shades. You know, many of the mineral sunscreens are now offering more than one shade, which is fantastic. So these guys need to get with the program. Next up is Ciele's Prime and Protect SPF 30 Smoothing Primer. Now, I was excited to try this one because Ciele's Tint and Protect SPF 50 is one of my all-time favorite skin tints. Now, I do want to make a note. Even though this says SPF of 50, this is a skin tint, not a sunscreen. You know, I usually only use 4 or 5, maybe 6 drops at the most, which provides, I don't know, maybe an SPF of 10 at the most. Again, almost all skin tints or foundations, even if they say SPF, they do not provide protection. You always need a standalone SPF. Now, this is SPF 30, which is the minimum you need. I do wish the SPF were a little bit higher, but together I do feel like this gives me a little bit of a boost, and they work beautifully together. Anyway, this is $40 for 50 mLs, comes in a squeezy tube, and I'll show you the consistency. Even though it looks a little bit thicker, it's still incredibly lightweight. This contains 10% zinc oxide as well as other hydrators. This has 4.4 stars on Sephora, and it's also available in a travel size mini, which is a great way to try a product without investing in the full size. Now, when I purchased this, it only came in one shade, but since I purchased it, they have now offered 2 additional shades in a glowier finish. Anyway, this is incredibly lightweight. This blends really easily, and the neutral tint literally disappears into my skin. It dries down to a natural satin finish. Now, it does continue to feel ever so slightly tacky, but I think that's the gripping nature of the primer. It is perfect under the Ciele skin tint as well as several other of my tints and foundations. Now, like I said, this is a satin skin-like finish, and I am curious to try their new glowier formula. Next up is the Tower 28 SOS Face Guard SPF 30. You know, I do enjoy several Tower 28 products. I really like their concealer. They have a lovely blush, and their mascara is really good as well. So I was excited to try this. Now, I did try the Tower 28 Sunny Days Skin Tint. I think it was a SPF 30 or 50. I tried it a few years ago thinking it was a sunscreen. However, it was way too pigmented and heavy for me to apply the 1/4 of a teaspoon necessary to get the SPF on the label. So that one to me is more of a skin tint than a sunscreen. You know, marketing can be so confusing. Is a product a skin tint with a little extra SPF, like my beloved Ciele, or is a product a dedicated sunscreen? Now that they came out with this one, I do think they're marketing the Sunny Days more as a skin tint, but even so, I felt like it was a little bit too heavy. Anyway, this comes in a squeezy tube, and this has a really lovely, very lightweight, sort of a whipped, creamy formula. Feels really, really moisturizing. This contains 12.5% zinc oxide, ceramides, glycerin, squalane, and allantoin. Now this is $32 for 50 mLs, and it does have a 4.5 star rating on Sephora. Although they say this works for all skin tones, I do find it ever just a tad warm for my skin tone right now, but I do think it'll work nicely in the summer. It feels super lightweight and moisturizing going on my skin. It spreads easily, and it sets to a hydrated satin with just a touch of radiance. Now this does feel a little bit more moisturizing than the Ciele sunscreen. This actually reminds me a little bit of my favorite In Beauty Project Mineral Sun Glow, but I do hope they come out with a couple more shades. I am a huge fan of RMS Beauty, so I was really excited when they sent me their, what is this called? Super Natural Radiant Serum SPF 30. Now this is $49, but it only has 30 ml. So this is actually, I believe, the priciest sunscreen I'm sharing with you today. This does have 4.8 stars on Sephora, and it comes in 3 shades. And of course, I got the lightest shade. Now for some reason, I am having a difficult time squeezing it out of the tube. I think it was a little bit easier to dispense when I first got it. That was about a year ago. It is, I don't know, a very rich, emollient, almost greasy consistency. And like I said, I have the lightest shade, which is definitely a little light for me, but I do think that the medium shade would probably be a little bit too deep and a little bit too warm. As far as the claims, RMS claims that this will even the skin tone, provide a sheer natural glow, it will feel lightweight, it will blend easily, it will hide imperfections, smooth skin, hydrate, and nourish. Unfortunately, as you will see, I do disagree with most of those claims. Ingredients include glycerin, squalane. It has some really lovely oils such as sunflower seed oil and olive oil, but it also contains several essential oils such as lavender and orange peel and juniper, which I do happen to be allergic to. So even if I loved this, this isn't one that I would use on a daily basis. But I can show you how it applies and how it looks on the skin. As you can see, it is pretty thick. It feels and looks heavy and greasy. It does take quite a bit of effort to work it into my skin, and it takes a long time to set down to a less greasy but still quite shiny, almost a metallic finish, almost like a highlighter. Now it does feel super moisturizing and protective, but definitely not weightless. As much as I adore so many of the RMS products, I just can't use this as a sunscreen without makeup. Although I do think it might make a really nice glowy hydrating primer under a foundation to add a little bit of glow. So unpopular opinion, even though this is highly rated and many people seem to love it, this is not a product that I would repurchase even if I wasn't allergic. Now this next product delivers everything I expected from the RMS, and it is the LiveTinted Huegaurd Glotion Mineral SPF 50. Now surprisingly, this only has 3.6 star rating on Ulta, which really surprises me. Anyway, I did receive both the Huegaurd SPF and the LiveTinted Huegaurd Skin Tint SPF. I can't see it. I think it's the SPF 50. I received both of these in PR. Now this one to me is a skin tint, although Angie did review this last year as a dedicated SPF and she really enjoyed it. But for me, this is a little too pigmented and a little too heavy to use the 1/4 of a teaspoon as a SPF. And it does say it's a skin tint. So you will be seeing this one in my upcoming skin tint roundup in just a couple of weeks. Anyway, this one is $36 for 50 mLs. It does come in 2 shades, which is a bonus. And of course, I ordered the lighter of the 2 shades, and it has a really nice consistency, very serum-y. Oh my gosh, it feels so lovely going on the skin. 9.5% zinc oxide, glycerin, propanediol, and it has some antioxidants such as butterfly bush and Indian gooseberry. Really, really lovely. Now this claims pretty much all the claims of the RMS. It will hydrate, prime, and brighten, weightless, non-greasy, radiant, even finish. And I agree with all of the claims. This blends easily. It feels lightweight yet moisturizing, not at all greasy. The slight peachy tint has just a touch of a sheer coverage, just enough to even out my skin tone slightly. It sets down without tackiness, just a touch of really pretty radiance. I really enjoyed this one. It looks really pretty alone without makeup, and it works really well with makeup. Like I said, this is what I had hoped the RMS would be. Now Bosley is still with us. He just decided to reposition. Anyway, ColorScience is very well known for very high quality mineral sunscreens. And I really appreciate that all of their sunscreens are water resistant to 40 minutes. Over the years, I have very much enjoyed ColorScience Classic and ColorScience Sheer, which is untinted. Again, one of those rare untinted sunscreens that does not leave a white cast. Now the Classic has a little bit of a peach tone, but it completely disappears into the skin. And I have repurchased the Classic and the Sheer several times over the years. So when ColorScience offered to send me some PR, I decided I have to put my glasses on so I can read the label. I decided I wanted to try both the Glow formula and the Flex formula. Now the Glow, like the Classic, a little bit pricey, $52, but it does have 55 mLs of product. Ingredients and claims are very similar with the Classic, the Sheer, and the Glow. 12% zinc oxide, propanediol, niacinamide, both claim to be lightweight and hydrating. Now the Classic only comes in one peachy shade. I'll show you the consistency of both the Classic and the Glow. Okay, so here is the Classic. You can see it has a peachy tone, and here is the Glow. Now the Classic literally disappears into my skin. Sheer natural, sort of somewhat radiant finish, whereas the Glow is a little bit thicker, a little bit more tinted, and definitely, as you will see, a little more glow. So today I am going to apply Classic on one side of my face and Glow on the other. Now the Classic blends effortlessly. It literally disappears into my skin and it doesn't offer any coverage. It just has a really nice natural skin-like finish. Now even though the Glow is slightly thicker and more emollient, it still blends really easily. And the Glow definitely has a glow. It also has a very light coverage, just enough to even out the redness in my skin slightly. The Glow actually has a tad more coverage than the Live Glotion, and it has more glow, almost shiny, but it still looks nice on bare skin. Now the ColorScience Glow does dry down to a really nice, deeply moisturized, protected feeling, yet without any tackiness. And I do think that it enhances the skin in a pretty way, but you have to really enjoy a glow. And it also works well under makeup. Now the ColorScience Sun Forgettable Face Shield Flex SPF 50 is a shade adjusting product. It does come in 6 shades, and I did order the 2 lightest shades. Now the lightest shade was way too light for me, so this one is the second to the lightest shade. It comes out white, but when you work it into the skin, it, breaks those little color beads, and it is supposed to adjust to your skin tone. But you really have to work it in really well. Now, this one is $58, but again, it does have 55 mLs. Similar ingredients to the Classic and the Glow, also water resistant, but this one claims medium coverage with a demi matte natural finish. Definitely a thicker formula. Goes on white, and you really need to spend some time and work it into the skin really well to get the color to come through. Now, the shade is much better than I expected, but what surprised me the most is the coverage. Very solid, high-medium coverage, more like a foundation. Now, it does take quite a while to set down to a natural skin-like finish, almost matte, but not flat. I would definitely not put a foundation over this. This gives me more than enough coverage. In fact, I don't really think I would use this on a no makeup day because it gives almost a mask-like appearance. So you actually need some makeup to sort of pull this all together. Now, I am wearing this today, and I do think it looks nice with a full face of makeup. Now, I do have some lights on me, so it's probably, and I have a glowy blush, so it is probably looking a little bit glowier than it does in person. Like I said, it's more of a satin finish, leaning demi-matte, which is not usually my preference. So I'm not really sure how much use I'm going to get out of this. However, if you are looking for a foundation with good coverage and good sun protection, you might really enjoy this if you can find a shade. Final thoughts, starting with my least favorite, although I am not specifically ranking these. I was pretty disappointed in the RMS. You know, this is just too metallic for me to use as a standalone sunscreen, and aside from the fact that I am allergic to juniper, I just don't think it's worth the price point. However, I love so many of the RMS products, so please don't let this review turn you off from RMS. And I do have a 20% discount code in the description box of all of my videos, which really helps with the price point. Next up, now this I did sort of like. The Kopari, I really enjoyed the texture and the finish. However, the shade is just a little bit too warm for me, and it did feel a little bit drying as the day wore on. However, Angie adored this, so if you have a skin type, skin tone, and preferences similar to Angie, you might really like this. And of course, the ColorScience Flex. Now, even though I do think it does look nice, it just has too much coverage for me to use as an everyday sunscreen, and it takes a lot of work to blend it in. You know, I do think it's feeling a little bit drying as the day wears on, but I do like ColorScience. I love their glow, I love their sheer, and their classic. As far as my favorites, now the rest of these products I did enjoy for one reason or another, but again, I am not ranking these. The product that surprised me the most is definitely the CeraVe. It can be incredibly difficult to find an untinted mineral sunscreen that does not leave a white cast, especially at the drugstore, and you cannot beat the price. I also really did enjoy both the Tower 28 and the Ciele, although I do wish they had a higher SPF rating. They're both 30. I also wish that the Tower 28 would come out with some additional shades, and I am interested to try the new glowier version of the Ciele that does come in 2 shades. I do enjoy them both, but I do find the Tower 28 just a little bit more moisturizing. The Ultraviolet, I can't read it. The Ultraviolet, oh my gosh, I think this was the lightest weight, sheerest sunscreen of all that I tried today. It literally felt and looked invisible on the skin. Let's see, what else do I have here? Now, I really did enjoy the glow of the tinted, LiveTinted Huegaurd Glotion. I also enjoyed the ColorScience glow, but I have to say, I think I preferred the glow from the LiveTinted a little bit more. The ColorScience was just ever so slightly too glowy, and it felt a little bit heavier on the skin. But they're both moisturizing, they're both beautiful, and they both work really well under makeup. And I am really excited to be reviewing the LiveTinted Skin Tint in my Skin Tint Roundup in a couple of weeks. Time will tell if any of these sunscreens earn a permanent position in my sunscreen wardrobe. You know, I do plan to do my annual all-time favorite sunscreens later in the summer, so stay tuned for that. And please, once again, share your favorite sunscreens so we can all help each other.